out Georgia State University. Chris, congratulations on getting drafted. Let's go Panthers. Next, we're going to talk about the NBA playoffs. Playoffs? Right now, we've got a couple of games going on. Let's take a look. I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on this, San Antonio won. They did. San Antonio won 106-91. They're up 1-0. The Lakers are currently up by 10, 1-9. But the bigger issue in the NBA playoffs, obviously, is Derrick Rose being lost for the season to an ACL injury. He's done for the playoffs, and presumably, just based on some of the intel I got from Stephania Bell from ESPN, he may be gone for a long time. The ACL injury and the anterior cruciate ligament injury are one of those injuries that basketball players don't come back from the same. You are not going to see the same Derrick Rose. Let me take a second, however, to deviate and tell Stephen A. Smith to shut up.
Amen.
I hate you, Stephen A. Smith.
Preach, brother.
I hate you more than Matt Ryan. I used to like you a lot, but recently you become a character of yourself. And when he was on ESPN, he was basically saying, which is kind of what everybody kind of thinks, the Bulls are going to not make the conference finals. That part's fine. You can say that. Then he goes on to say, the players need to realize that, the fans need to realize that, the ownership needs to realize that, but they won't because they got to put up a brave face. No, they don't. They're in the playoffs. They're the number 1 seed. They played well without Derrick Rose. There's no reason for them to not say we can still play defense and still win 4 out of 7 games in one of these series. We may not have an explosive scorer, but we're a team, and they're going to listen. If you're the Chicago Bulls, you take the challenge. A lot of people are thinking that whoever comes out of the 4-5 matchup with the Hawks and the Celtics are going straight to the conference finals, and it's up to the Bulls to say no. We've still got a team behind Derrick Rose, but this is crushing for the Bulls.
Yeah, and you worry about Rose, particularly because so much of his ability was based on the kind of athletic skill that you need. You need good knees for. This was not a guy that was a fantastic outside shooter. This was not a guy who was a fantastic mid-range jump shooter. This is a guy who got to the basket and was very physical. He's almost like a Dwayne Wade prototype, and you really worry for him. I never hope any player ends their career, with a couple exceptions, Stephon Marbury, but I did. But I'm not a big Foles fan anymore. But you gotta hope for Rose. He seems like a good kid. I'll tell you my perspective on this. For Derrick Rose, this is a terrible news. For the Bulls in the long term, this is terrible news. But in terms of things that happened yesterday, that was not what shocked me. Obviously, the Bulls have played without Rose a bunch this year. Mm-hmm. They've played well without Rose a bunch this year. There are teams that would love to have the Bulls' winning percentage without Rose as their winning percentage, period. What shocked me yesterday was how poorly the Knicks played against the Heat. Because the story on the Knicks was great defense, similar, at least after D'Antoni left. And for any Hawks fans, Mike Woodson can coach D. He can't coach O, but he can coach D. And the Bulls are going to be okay. They've got talent. They've got a fantastic defense, maybe the best in the league. The Knicks were supposed to have a great defense. They played awfully yesterday. The Heat just took them to the woodshed in a game where the Heat weren't even necessarily playing that well, but the Heat showed them what real defense is like in the playoffs. The Knicks scored in the 60s, I think.
Yeah,
it was terribly embarrassing. To me, that was more shocking. Obviously, Rose going down is terrible for the Chicago fans, but in terms of what's going to affect the outcome of the first round of the playoffs more, I still think the Bulls are going to beat the 76ers. I don't think based on this first game, you wonder whether the Knicks will win a game. The only way based on that game they do is if the Heat get bored, which is very possible.
Sure. Uncle Nick?
We all know that I'm not the biggest NBA fan, but I do have one tidbit for you, and it harkens back to my days in West Virginia. You'll note that at halftime in the Denver Nuggets Los Angeles Lakers game, the leading scorer for the Lakers is
Kobe Bryant.
It is not Mr. Bryant.
Bynum.
Nope, it's not that fellow either.
Pau Gasol.
Nope, it is neither Pau Gasol.
Khloe Kardashian.
No, it is also not her.
Interesting.
But it is, in fact, Mr. Devin Ebanks.
Where's
12 points. The second leading scorer in the game as a whole. Mr. Ebanks, West Virginia.
Oh,
wow.
That's okay.
Reliving those Final Four days.
By the way, I had one of those moments yesterday that really gives you some perspective, and I'll take this to the Nuggets Lakers, and I'll get through this quickly. But I have a 9-year-old daughter. For those of you who listen to the podcast know Zoe came on, and in fact, Riverside Eric in the AFC NFC Championship and won.
She's a bad little girl.
For the first time yesterday, she realized that there was a team in the NBA called the Nuggets. And she literally fell down laughing at the prospect that there was a team called the Nuggets. And all she kept saying over and over again was, the Nuggets, the Nuggets. And we couldn't figure out why she was laughing so much. So we asked her, and she said, they're like chicken nuggets. What are they, like the shortest team in the NBA? And it gave you this moment where you're like, oh, that is kind of a ridiculous nickname. But there you go. All right, well, let's talk about the rest of the playoffs.
I will say, I was someone who was a big proponent of the Knicks being a sleeper, but the assumption was they would avoid the Miami Heat in the first round. The Miami Heat yesterday proved that they have a level that is within them that no other team can possibly get a hold of. The Thunder struggled with the Mavericks, who the Mavericks struggled all season and barely made the playoffs, but the Thunder needed a late second shot by Kevin Durant to win that game. If the Heat come out and they decide to play defense, the Knicks can't match up with them. They've got no one that can guard Wade. Carmelo Anthony does not know defense if it came and slapped him in the face. There's a Stoudemire has gotten. I think he's getting older and he's lost that explosion that he needs to handle a guy like Bosh.
He looked awful.
He looked terrible yesterday. No question about it. The conference final is going to be Boston versus the Heat, and
it cannot be I guess it can.
Finals.
Yeah, you're right.
Conference final will be Boston versus the Heat, and unless Boston has, doesn't show. You know what? I don't think there's a team in the East that can hang with the Heat.
Not anymore. Not anymore. And I mean, I think once again the Heat show that when the playoffs come, they can turn it up, which is one of the signs of a championship team. And now that the Bulls don't have Rose, I think you're going to see the Heat having a much easier path. Let me say one real quick thing about the East before we go on any further, and that's I noticed that you have already written off the Hawks' chances.
Who's that?
I agree. I've said they're dead to me more than once, but I want them to do well. And you said something on Facebook that I think is accurate, and that is, theoretically, this should be the Hawks' best chance to win a second-round playoff series ever. And that's something they've never done in the history of the franchise. If they can get past Boston, they're going to get the winner of the Bulls 76ers, and that will probably be the Bulls, and it will probably be a Derrick Rose-less Bulls. Even better for the Hawks if it's the 76ers, so I don't think can hang with them. The only question is whether they can get past the Celtics, but as a Hawks fan, I don't have any reason to think they can. If they do, I think you'll suddenly see some interest from the Atlanta Hawks fan base.
If I'm the Atlanta Hawks, obviously the Hawks would be in much better shape if Horford could play. But he's already out for the first round, and that's crippling to them. Their bench has played well this year.
Yeah.
For anyone who knows me, I was a Hawks fan for a long time, and at some point it just became too much to bear. But I will say this: everyone has written off the Hawks,
including you.
Well, yeah, but I written them off years ago. This is not news. But no one seems to think that the Hawks have a chance in a series against the Celtics where they have the home field advantage. And if you remember this game or the series a couple of years ago, the home team won every game.
They do not have the home field advantage.
The Hawks do have the home field advantage.
Do they? They're the 5th seed.
The reason the Hawks have the home field advantage is because they have a better record.
They're the 5th seed. Do they just do it based on record?
Boston won their conference.
So?
Boston won their conference, so they're listed as a higher seed. But the rule in the NBA is...
nice. I did not know that.
The rule in the NBA is that if you have a better record than the higher seed, you get the home court advantage. The Hawks will play 4 games in Atlanta, presumably.
Well, and as anyone who's watched the Hawks in the last 6 or so years knows, they've played well against the Celtics. They were one in a year when they had no business to be as good as them. Mm-hmm. They took them to 7 games. They've played well against the Celtics. They match up well against the Celtics. They match up better than you'd think against the Heat. Although I don't think they have a real shot in that series because we don't have anywhere near the offensive potential that the Heat do.
The problem is, again, that they need Horford.
Yep.
Because Horford slots them in ways in which they have matchup problems against other teams.
Of the ESPN experts, Chad Ford's with you.
Yeah, really? your boy Stephen A. has written off the Hawks as well. In fact, in the course of his "the Bulls are definitely out of the playoffs" kind of thing, he was already talking about how Boston was going to
If there's one thing that the Hawks have shown over the last year, starting with Woodson, is if there is a game at home that the fans get up for, they will play at a different level. Now,
which to me is an indictment of that team, but you're absolutely right.
Which means, they don't have to win any games in Boston.
Yeah.
They've just got to hold serve.
Yeah.
Which means if they do that, they get presumably the Bulls. And I'm saying presumably because people are writing off Philly, but that could be a grueling series now. This is the Atlanta Hawks have never gotten to the conference finals. This is the first chance that you could. I give the Atlanta Hawks like a 45% chance to get to the conference finals because they've got a good shot to beat Boston.
Yep.
Well, they ain't beating the Heat.
No.
But they can beat Boston.
Yep. And it would be, as much as I've said the Hawks are dead to me until they either get rid of Joe Johnson or get sold to a different ownership group. But they could actually do well. They could actually get through, and I think it would be good for the franchise. The Atlanta sports market needs some victories. People that talk about what a bad market we are idiots. They do not understand our heartbreak. Let's talk about the West. My San Antonio Spurs.
What?
I love Tim Duncan.
Oh,
You've commented on this podcast before.
They
looked pretty good today. They were supposed to get. Everyone was talking about how they were going to.
You just squid him, don't you?
No, I just like Timmy. They looked good today. Everyone was talking about how they got swept. They got kicked out in the first round last year. I don't think that's going to happen this year.
No.
And then they play the winner of the Mavs-Clippers series, which could be either one of those teams based on last night. Then you've got the Lakers, who should beat the Nuggets. And you've got the Thunder, who did not look great in a victory against the Mavs last night. I'm sorry, I guess it's the Grizzlies and the Clippers. Mm-hmm. The Mavs nearly beat Oklahoma City. They should have beaten Oklahoma City last night. But for an unlikely Kevin Durant shot that bounced up high off the rim and then went in, they would have won. Who do you see coming out of the West now based on what we've seen so far?
The Spurs.
Really?
I kind of ribbed you a little bit about this, but everyone's very high on Oklahoma City. And there's something about that team I can't put my finger on. But when I watched that game last night, Dallas should have won. Dallas, I think, was leading by 9 with 1:30 to go.
Yep.
And then they just kind of caved in and collapsed. Oklahoma City, and people, I'm getting flack for this, especially from someone like Tony Powell, haven't done anything.
Yep.
They went to the conference finals last year. They probably should have won it last year, but they lost to Dallas, and Dallas isn't going anywhere. They've got to go through Dallas, and then the Lakers, and then presumably the Spurs. If they do that, all praises to them. But that's going to be a rugged 3 teams to go through.
Well,
I don't think they can do it.
I'll tell you something else, and I thought this was a problem with Oklahoma City for a while. They are not physical enough. And in order to get to the finals, they're going to have to go through the Mavs, who have a certain degree of physicality, although not that as much as you might think, and not as much as they did last year since Chandler's not around anymore.
Right.
They'll have to go through a Lakers team that is very physical, that has players like Bynum who are physical, and then the Spurs are really physical as well, and the Spurs are more muscly than you would think. And I just feel like I watch the Thunder play a fair amount, and they just don't do well at making hard shots around the basket. And Kevin Durant in this game that they won just did not do a good job of getting to the rim as much as he should when his outside shot failed him, which it did in spectacular fashion.
No,
so you're seeing Heat Spurs.
Yeah, I got Heat Spurs. I will say this. I would not be surprised, and I hate to say this because I know how many Lakers fans I know. I would not be surprised if it's the Lakers, but I'm very high on what Bynum and Gasol can do. I don't think Meta World Peace matters in terms of the outcome of a game. Defensively, maybe, but not anything special. Uncle Nick?
Can I shout out the D-League for a second?
Okay.
I just want to say, and since we're talking about the Spurs, we should know that their D-League affiliate, the Austin Toros, won the D-League championship this year. Playing on the Austin Toros is none other than West Virginia's very own Deshaun Butler, who averaged 11.1 points this season for the Toros. So congratulations to the Toros for winning the D-League championship.
That is the kind of in-depth analysis you get on the podcast that you will not get anywhere else.
Wow.
That's strong. Wow. Do you have a pick out of the West?
Wow.
I like the Spurs.
Yeah.
I'm a Duncan fan. He gets it done. He's got the experience. That's a strong team. DeJuan Blair coming off the bench. Tony Parker. I mean, it's just a good team, and I think there are good odds that Spurs are going to pull it out.
I will say this about the Spurs. I think that I don't want to sound cryptic when I say this, but they know the light is at the end of the tunnel.
Yep.
This team, Tim Duncan can't play forever, and he's slowly but surely, not the same kind of player. They did lose Thiago Splitter. There it is.
Yeah.
To a wrist injury today. I don't know how serious that is. But they're on a mission, and they I hate to agree with Skip Bayless, but they've steamrolled teams.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been close. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Oklahoma City is ready. I think Kobe feels the same way. The Lakers could easily beat Oklahoma City, but they've got. I mean, honestly, the Spurs have to go through the Jazz. That's nothing. Then they've got the Grizzlies and the Clippers. They should be able to beat them, especially if it'll probably be the Grizzlies. But I've got the Spurs versus the Heat. Everyone wants it to be the Lakers or the Heat and the Glitz and Glamour, and either the Lakers or Oklahoma City because of ratings. But the Spurs are just a better team, and I think that it will be it'll be a cathartic moment in a ways for LeBron because the first time he went to the finals, he got swept by the Spurs.
Right.
And here it is, he gets a chance to kind of get them, and I think he'll get it done. He looked like a man on a mission yesterday.
He really did.
Cathartic?
Cathartic.
Love it.
There you go.
Didn't know I knew that word, did you?
Had no idea.
Mm-hmm.